We are living in a post-Prometheus world, and it's an exciting time. As someone who's been a fan of the Alien franchise for practically his entire life, I can't begin to express how amazing it is that this movie even exists. I mean, for the longest time, the idea of an Alien prequel was just a fantasy. Something fans would talk and theorize about, and something that, occasionally, Ridley Scott would tease about every now and then. But there definitely was a point where I just thought an Alien prequel was about as likely as making it to the big screen as that Vega Brothers movie that Quentin Tarantino always talked about. I thought it was just pie-in-the-sky fanboy dreaming, but here is Ridley Scott, over 30 years later, returning to science fiction, returning to the Alien franchise with his vast, magnificent career now under his belt, and Prometheus is his latest film. And the weird thing is that not only did this movie exceed my impossibly high expectations, but it addressed many that I didn't even know I had. It is an extremely and surprisingly ambitious film, much more so than its sister film Alien, which, as good as it is and as much as I love it, it really only serves as an exceptionally well-made B-horror monster movie, which is fine and it works terrifically, but Prometheus has completely different ideas and goals. It expands that first Alien movie in a big bad way, and in some ways devalues it and the subsequent sequels, letting us know that all along there were much larger factors at play. It's not necessarily a better movie than Alien. In fact, though they do have many similarities, it's almost pointless to compare them since they are ultimately drastically different movies. Prometheus is a more thoughtful science fiction picture, full of interesting ideas and philosophies, and a damn good amount of horror to back it up. It's not called Prometheus for kicks, that's for sure. I'm sure you know the plot, but in a nutshell, it's about a group of scientists who set out on an expedition to discover the source of humanity. Definitely not a lightweight concept. What I ultimately admired about the movie the most was the fact that it took its ideas seriously. It all wasn't made just for the sake of being made. It does have a purpose to be. It's its own unique movie. It's not simply, hey, here's some scary shit that happened before the first Alien. No, not at all. And strangely enough, some of its harshest criticisms are due to the fact that it doesn't directly connect to Alien. Well, good, I'm glad it doesn't. Scott said from the very beginning it wasn't a direct tie-in, and said that fans would recognize strands of Alien's DNA, and I think that's fair enough. And I'm glad that everything isn't spelled out for us either, and it's nothing set in stone. A lot of it is very open to interpretation. It's a movie about ideas, which I appreciated. It's not content to be another run-of-the-mill monster movie. Some truly interesting ideas and areas are explored or implied, and there's far too much for my little mind to wrap around with just one viewing. It features the scientists asking why to the great eternal question, bluntly staring science and new possibilities to this question in the face, and curiously it does not balk or dismiss religion at all. I mean, at least not entirely. I kind of think it would be outright pompous to not at least put it on the table. We know that some far-off alien species discovered in this movie created humans. Why? Well, we don't really find out. We do find out pretty quickly that this species wants us dead. Why? Well, again, we don't really find that out either. The questions raised in Prometheus are almost inconsequential. The answers to the questions aren't so much the focus here as the consequences to the questions. Yes, it may be a thinking man sci-fi movie that should be open for some pretty interesting debates all around, but at its core it's a cautionary tale and a scary, disturbing horror thriller. Normally I'm pretty good with horror movies. I'm kind of jaded. It takes a lot to really get under my skin. And there is some fucked up shit in this movie, really. I'm almost, giddy over the fact that it affected me in the way that it did. Like that scene in the surgical pod. Holy shit, man, really, I was cringing and covering my face in the movie theater. And that almost never really happens to me. And just in general, as being first and foremost a creature feature, it does indeed deliver. Much like the first Alien takes its inspiration from H.R. Geiger's art and introduces us to some new scary alien beings. I love the design of the original Alien, but it's simply been overexposed. It's just not scary anymore, and While yes, we do see some similar looking creatures, it was nice that they actually bothered to introduce fresh new ideas in the monster department. I also thought it had a lot of strength in its cast, which was exceptional. Michael Fassbender was definitely a standout, playing the ship's android David, and I really enjoyed the great Idris Elba as the ship's captain. There are two strong female characters too, played by Noomi Rapace and Charlize Theron, and wisely they're not presented as carbon copies of Ripley, the role made famous by Sigourney Weaver, of course. Their character traits are different, but in a way, with their qualities, such as Theron playing Meredith Vickers with her cold, no-nonsense attitude, and Rapace playing Elizabeth Shaw with a vulnerability and willingness to move forward in the face of unspeakable horror, they could almost be like mothers to her. Also, side note, wasn't Charlize Theron just incredibly hot in this movie? I mean, really. But anyway, I do understand. I really do understand and appreciate the criticisms to this movie. I'm not going to shoot anyone down for not liking it or claim some kind of intellectual superiority, but I am glad that they went in the direction that they did with Prometheus. I'm glad they kept it a little ambiguous. I'm glad they didn't boldly answer everything. I'm glad they didn't tie it in perfectly to Alien as if they were two pieces to a puzzle or something. And I'm glad it remained enough of a respectful distance from Alien so both movies still maintain a good amount of mystery to them. Just imagine, though, if Prometheus answered questions to everything. If it set every single piece in place and explained everything leading up to Alien to a T. I can't begin to fathom how unsatisfying that would actually be. I mean, hello, Star Wars prequels, anyone? And I can't help but remember something Stanley Kubrick said, which I'm too lazy to look up, but I'll paraphrase. What if, under the painting of the Mona Lisa, there was a subtitle that read, "She is smiling because she's having a secret affair"? I think too much explanation to art is counterproductive to art, so I'll gladly take Prometheus's ambiguity and unanswered questions, and I appreciate all the more for it. Prometheus is a scarring and devastating film, an excellent future-set thriller with some truly horrifying scenes and visuals that are wonderful to behold. It also offers great science fiction with fresh and fascinating ideas that just about warrant Ridley Scott's 30-year absence from the genre. Not only was it worth the wait, and not only does it trump all the Alien movies in a lot of ways, but it's a surefire contender for Movie of the Year and sure to go down as a classic. I loved it. I can't recommend it highly enough. Go see it. We are living in a post-Prometheus world, and We are living in a post-Prometheus world, and it's an exciting time. As someone who's been a fan of the Alien franchise for practically his entire life, I can't begin to express how amazing it is that this movie even exists. I mean, for the longest time, the idea of an Alien prequel was just a fantasy, something fans would talk and theorize about, and something that occasionally Ridley Scott would tease about every now and then. But there definitely was a point where I thought that an Alien prequel was about as likely as making it to the big screen as a Christopher Walken movie. Hello?